The door splintered with a deafening crack as the battering ram hit it for the third time. 6-year-old Ethan Harper stood in the hallway, his plastic toy gun raised defiantly, his small frame positioned between the breaking door and his mother. "Get back, Mom," he shouted, his voice cracking with fear despite his brave stance. "I won't let them take you." Rebecca Harper's face was ashen, her trembling hand clutching her son's shoulder. The red sweater she wore stood out starkly against the white walls of their modest apartment. Outside, megaphones blared commands and blue lights strobed through the curtains. "Police! We have a warrant. Open the door now." Rebecca knelt down, her eyes level with Ethan's. "Baby, put that down. It's okay." She tried to keep her voice steady, but her words quivered in the air between them. "Remember what Mommy and Daddy taught you? If this ever happened?" The door gave way completely, and a flood of tactical officers poured in. The last thing Ethan saw before his mother pushed him into the bathroom was her face resigned, heartbroken, but somehow still trying to smile for him. 18 months earlier. "Higher, Daddy, higher!" Ethan squealed with delight as Mark Harper pushed him on the park swing. The autumn leaves scattered around them, painting the ground in shades of amber and gold. Mark laughed, his hands strong and sure against his son's back. "Any higher and you'll touch the clouds, little man." From a nearby bench, Rebecca watched them, her smile hiding the worry that had become her constant companion. She checked her phone again, another text from Vince. They needed Mark tonight. Another job. The Harper family looked perfect from the outside. A handsome father who worked as a night security guard, a devoted mother who did administrative work from home, and their bright, cheerful son. Their modest apartment was always clean, their bills always paid. Ethan was always well-dressed, well-fed, and loved beyond measure. No one knew that Mark Harper had never worked as a security guard. No one knew that the night shifts he claimed to work were spent breaking into pharmaceutical warehouses, or that the administrative work Rebecca did involved laundering money through a series of shell companies. The Harpers had fallen into crime gradually. Then, all at once, Mark had lost his construction job during the economic downturn. With a newborn baby and mounting medical bills from Rebecca's complicated pregnancy, desperation had led him to accept his old friend Vince's offer just one job. Just this once, just to get them through. One job became two. Two became a steady income. By the time Ethan was walking, Mark had become Vince Corelli's most trusted associate, and Rebecca had been pulled in to help manage the finances. They told themselves they would get out soon, save enough money, move away, start fresh. But soon kept stretching into years, and the deeper they got, the harder it became to see a way out. "Ice cream time?" Mark asked as Ethan jumped off the swing. "Yes." Ethan pumped his fist in the air. Rebecca joined them, linking her arm with Mark's. "We need to talk later," she whispered. Vince texted. The shadow that crossed Mark's face was quickly replaced with a smile for Ethan's benefit. "Let's enjoy our afternoon first." That night, after Ethan was asleep, Rebecca sat at their kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. "I don't want to do this anymore, Mark," she said when her husband emerged from Ethan's room. "He's getting older. He notices things. Yesterday he asked me why you never wear a uniform like other security guards." Mark sank into the chair across from her. "What did you tell him?" "That your company lets you wear regular clothes." "Another lie." She pushed her tea away. "We've put away enough. We could leave. Start over somewhere else." "You know it's not that simple. Vince doesn't let people just walk away. And this job tonight, it's big, Becca. Pharmaceutical-grade opioids. Vince says our cut will be enough to... To what? Buy our freedom." Rebecca's laugh was bitter. "There's always one more job. This time it's different. I promise." Mark reached across the table for her hand. "After tonight, we'll make a plan. A real one." Rebecca wanted to believe him. She always did. "Be careful," she said finally. "Ethan needs his father." Mark kissed her goodbye, and, as always, she felt the fear settle into her bones, the fear that one day he wouldn't come home. The job went wrong, terribly, catastrophically wrong. Mark came home at dawn, his eyes wild, blood on his jacket that wasn't his own. "We need to pack, now," His voice was a harsh whisper as he paced their bedroom. The guard wasn't supposed to be there. Vince panicked. He shot him. I tried to help, called 911 anonymously, but we need to go, Becca. They'll trace this back to us eventually. Rebecca felt the world tilt beneath her feet. The guard, is he? Critical condition. It's on the news already. Mark was pulling suitcases from their closet. Take only what we need. Wake Ethan. Mark, we can't just run. That's no life for Ethan. Always looking over our shoulders, moving from place to place. He needs stability, school, friends. What he needs is his parents, not visiting us in prison. Mark's voice rose, then dropped as he remembered Ethan sleeping down the hall. I'm not asking you, Rebecca. We're leaving, tonight. Rebecca stood her ground. No, I won't do this to our son. We need to turn ourselves in, make a deal, testify against Vince and the others. We can get witness protection. Are you insane? Vince would find us. You know what he does to people who talk. And you know what happens to children whose parents go to prison for years. I won't have Ethan put in the system. At least this way we have some control. Their argument continued in harsh whispers until dawn broke fully. In the end, they reached a compromise. They would flee, but only temporarily. They would gather evidence against Vince, enough to ensure they'd get a deal good enough to keep them together, or at least minimize their separation from Ethan. For 6 months, they lived on the move. Motels, short-term rentals, always paying cash. Ethan missed kindergarten. They told him they were on an adventure, but he was a perceptive child who saw through their forced smiles and sensed the tension thrumming between his parents. They gathered what they could: recordings of Vince's calls, photos of shipments, account numbers, names. Mark reached out to an old friend who had become a federal agent, testing the waters for a potential deal. Meanwhile, the guard who had been shot recovered, but the investigation intensified. Vince grew suspicious, cutting contact with Mark and the others involved in the botched job. Then came the message that changed everything. Vince had been arrested on unrelated charges. The Harpers saw their chance. They could return home, approach the authorities with their evidence, negotiate from a position where Vince couldn't reach them. It was Rebecca who insisted they return to their apartment first to retrieve birth certificates and other documents they'd need. Mark thought it was too risky, but Rebecca was determined to get Ethan's baby photos and the few family heirlooms they'd left behind. One night, she insisted, we'll go in after dark, get what we need, and be gone before morning. It was a fatal mistake. What they didn't know was that their apartment had been under surveillance for weeks. The police had been building a case against the entire organization, and Vince, trying to save himself, had given them the Harpers' names. They arrived at the apartment at midnight. Ethan was exhausted, falling asleep as Mark carried him from the car. For a moment, as they walked into their old home, it felt like they might reclaim their old lives too. Rebecca started gathering documents, while Mark put Ethan to bed in his old room. The boy woke briefly, looking around in sleepy confusion at the familiar space. Are we home for real, Daddy? He murmured. Mark smoothed his son's hair. Get some sleep, buddy. We'll talk in the morning. It was nearly dawn when they heard the first sirens. Mark looked out the window and saw the street filling with police vehicles. They found us. His voice was hollow. They must have been watching the apartment. Rebecca clutched the box of photos and documents to her chest. The evidence: we can still make a deal. There's no time. Mark grabbed his gun from the kitchen drawer. Take this. I'll create a diversion. Draw them away. You take Ethan out the back, through the Wilson's yard. Remember our emergency plan. Mark, no. It's the only way one of you stays free. For Ethan. He kissed her fiercely. I love you both. Go. Rebecca tried to wake Ethan, but he was deeply asleep after their long journey. She had to carry him, which would slow her down. As she gathered him in her arms, she heard the police megaphone outside. Mark and Rebecca Harper, we have the building surrounded. Come out with your hands up. Mark looked at her one last time. Wait for my signal. Then he was gone, heading for the building's rear exit. Rebecca heard shouting, then gunshots. Her heart stopped. She waited for Mark's signal, but it never came. Minutes passed like hours. Then her phone buzzed a text from an unknown number, but she knew it was from their federal contact. Mark in custody. Deal off the table now. They're coming for you next. Rebecca felt her world collapse. Without Mark creating a diversion, there was no escape route. The police would be at their door any minute. She looked at Ethan, still mercifully asleep, and made a decision. She gently woke her son. Baby, listen to me. Some police officers are going to come here. They think Mommy and Daddy did something wrong. Ethan's eyes widened. Did you? The question pierced her heart. Sometimes good people make mistakes when they're trying to take care of the people they love, but I need you to be brave now. Can you do that? He nodded solemnly. Rebecca took his toy gun from the shelf. If anyone tries to take me away, you protect me, okay? Just like we play sometimes. But remember, it's just pretend. You don't hurt anyone for real, ever. She knew it was wrong to involve him, but she wanted one last moment with her son. One last image of him trying to protect his family before everything fell apart. And somehow, she thought it might help him later to remember that he had tried to be brave, that he hadn't just watched passively as his world was destroyed. The battering ram hit their door, once, twice. And so they stood in the hallway, a mother in a red sweater and her small son with a plastic gun, facing the inevitable. The aftermath unfolded with brutal efficiency. Rebecca was arrested. Ethan screamed and cried as they took her away, the toy gun forgotten on the floor. A kind-faced social worker tried to comfort him, explaining that he would be staying with his grandmother, his father's mother, while things got sorted out. Gloria Harper was a stern woman who had disowned her son years ago when she suspected his involvement with Vince Corelli. Now, she took in her grandson out of duty rather than love, her resentment for her son's choices barely concealed. Your parents made bad decisions, she told Ethan on his first night in her spotless, joyless home. But that doesn't mean you have to. For Ethan, only 6 years old, the concepts of crime and punishment were abstract. All he knew was that his parents were gone, and no one would tell him when they were coming back. The trial made headlines. Local pharmacist and wife revealed as key players in opioid trafficking ring. Mark took a deal eventually, testifying against Vince in exchange for a reduced sentence of 15 years. Rebecca, who had handled the money and never directly participated in the thefts, received 8 years. Gloria took Ethan to visit them once a month, Mark in the state penitentiary, Rebecca in the women's correctional facility an hour away. The visits were awkward, painful affairs. Ethan grew increasingly withdrawn, unable to reconcile the loving parents of his memories with these strangers in prison uniforms. On his 7th birthday, Rebecca gave him a card she had made in her prison art program. Inside, she had written, "Sometimes people who love each other very much still make terrible mistakes. But my love for you was never a mistake. It's the one true thing in my life." Ethan read it, then handed it back to her silently. By the time he was 8, he had stopped speaking during the visits altogether. By 9, he refused to go. Gloria, never warm but not cruel, tried in her rigid way to give him structure. She enrolled him in good schools, made sure he did his homework, took him to a therapist who specialized in children with incarcerated parents. But she never spoke of her son and daughter-in-law except to reinforce the lesson that crime led to punishment. The other children at school discovered Ethan's story eventually. Some avoided him. Others taunted him. "Criminal kid," they called him. "Your mom and dad are drug dealers. My mom says that's why people die." Ethan got into fights. His grades suffered. The bright, loving child in the family photos Rebecca had so desperately wanted to save became a distant memory. On Ethan's 10th birthday, a letter came from Mark. Gloria almost didn't give it to him, but the therapist advised that cutting all contact wasn't healthy. "Son," the letter read, "I know you don't want to see us anymore, and I understand, but I want you to know that what happened wasn't your fault. Your mother and I made choices before you were born that set us on a path we couldn't escape. We thought we were doing it for you, to give you a good life, but we were wrong. So wrong. The only thing I ask is that you learn from our mistakes. Stay clean, stay honest. There is no amount of money or comfort worth the price we've paid being separated from you. I love you always, Dad. Ethan read the letter, then tore it into tiny pieces. That night, he dreamed of standing in the hallway with his toy gun, trying to protect his mother. In the dream, the police didn't break down the door. Instead, they turned away, and his family stayed together. He woke up crying for the first time in years. As Ethan entered his teenage years, the weight of his parents' crimes and absence shaped him in ways both visible and invisible. He became both fiercely independent and deeply distrustful. He excelled academically not out of joy for learning, but out of a determination to never need anyone or anything badly enough to make the choices his parents had made. When Gloria died suddenly of a heart attack just after Ethan's 15th birthday, there was no other family to take him in. He entered the foster system, the very fate his mother had feared for him when she'd refused to go on the run. His first foster home lasted 3 months before they decided he was too difficult. The second, 6 months. The third was better, a middle-aged couple who had fostered dozens of children over the years and understood trauma. They didn't try to replace his parents. They didn't demand gratitude or affection. They simply provided stability and respect. It was there, in that house, that Ethan finally opened a letter from his mother on his 16th birthday. "My dearest Ethan," she wrote, "I don't know if you're reading these letters. I've written one every year on your birthday since we've been apart. I want you to know that not a day goes by that I don't think of you, that I don't regret the choices that took me away from you. I have 2 more years in this place. When I get out, I won't force myself back into your life, but I want you to know I'll be waiting if you ever want to talk, to explain, to apologize, to simply see you as the young man you've become. With all my love, always, Mom." For the first time, Ethan didn't throw the letter away. He folded it carefully and put it in his backpack. That summer, Rebecca Harper was granted early release for good behavior. She had served 6 years of her 8-year sentence. She rented a small apartment and found work at a nonprofit that helped formerly incarcerated women reintegrate into society. She didn't contact Ethan directly. Instead, she reached out to a social worker, asking if he would be willing to see her. She understood if the answer was no. The social worker delivered the message. Ethan took a week to think about it. Then he said no. 2 more years passed. Mark remained in prison, halfway through his sentence. Ethan graduated high school with honors and received a scholarship to the state university. His foster parents came to the ceremony and took photos. There was an empty space in the audience where biological parents should have been. On his 18th birthday, now legally an adult, Ethan received a package. Inside was a box of the family photos Rebecca had been so desperate to save that fateful night. There was also a letter with an address, Rebecca's, and a simple message. "These belong to you. No pressure. No expectations. I'm proud of the man you've become, even from a distance." Ethan put the package away without looking through the photos. It was 6 months later when he finally made the decision. He had just finished his first semester of college, studying criminal justice, his way of understanding the system that had shaped his life. He took a bus across town to the address Rebecca had provided. He stood outside the apartment building for nearly an hour before finding the courage to buzz her apartment. When the door opened, he barely recognized her. The vibrant woman in the red sweater from his childhood memories had been replaced by someone smaller, grayer, her eyes lined with the weight of her experiences. But when she saw him, her face transformed. Joy and disbelief and heartbreak all mingled together. "Ethan?" she whispered, as if saying his name too loudly might make him disappear. "I'm not staying," he said immediately. I had some questions." Rebecca nodded, stepping back. "Would you like to come in? Or we could go to the cafe down the street if that's more comfortable." "The cafe," he decided. Neutral territory. They sat across from each other, 2 strangers connected by blood and severed by circumstance. Rebecca didn't touch her coffee. Ethan gripped his like a lifeline. "Why did you put that toy gun in my hands?" he asked finally. It was the question that had haunted him for years. That night, when the police came, you knew what was happening. Why would you make me part of it?" Rebecca's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away from his accusing gaze. "It was the most selfish thing I've ever done," she admitted. "More selfish than the money laundering, more selfish than running. I wanted one last moment where you were still my little boy who thought he could protect his mommy. Before you learned what I really was. You used me." Yes, her honesty was stark. "I did. There's no excuse for that, Ethan. None at all." They talked for hours. Rebecca answered every question about the crimes, about her relationship with Mark, about the choices that had led to that night. She made no excuses, offered no justifications beyond the raw truth. "We started with good intentions," she said, "to provide for you, but we became addicted to the money, to the lifestyle it gave us. We told ourselves we were doing it for you, but that was a lie we told ourselves to sleep at night." When they finally parted, Ethan didn't hug her. He didn't promise to come back, but he said, "Thank you for the truth." It was a beginning, not a reconciliation. 2 weeks later, Ethan received news that Mark had been stabbed during a prison fight. By the time Ethan reached the hospital, his father was in a coma. For 3 days, Ethan sat by his father's bedside. Rebecca came too, keeping a respectful distance, present but not intrusive. Mark never woke up. He died on the 4th day, 12 years into his 15-year sentence. At the small, sparsely attended funeral, Ethan stood apart from Rebecca. As the plain casket was lowered into the ground, he felt hollow-eyed, grieving the father he had known, but mourning the father he could have had, the life they could have shared. Rebecca approached him afterward. "I understand if you want nothing to do with me," she said quietly, "but I want you to know that I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of a second chance, not expecting it, just working toward it." Ethan looked at her for the first time since their reunion. He saw beyond his anger to the woman who had once been the center of his world, who had made catastrophic mistakes but was trying, in her imperfect way, to atone. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," he said honestly. "Either of you. What you did, it didn't just hurt strangers. It destroyed our family. It stole my childhood." "I know," she whispered. "But I don't want to be defined by what you did anymore, or by my anger about it." He took a deep breath. "So maybe we can talk again sometime." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a fairy tale reunion. But as they walked away from Mark's grave separately, but in the same direction, it was something like the first faint light after a very long night. For Ethan Harper, the boy who had once stood with a toy gun trying to protect his mother from justice, it was the beginning of understanding that true justice wasn't about punishment or vengeance or even forgiveness. Sometimes, it was simply about finding the strength to move forward, carrying the weight of the past without being crushed by it. Sometimes, that was enough. Like the video and subscribe to the channel if you liked the video.